Leave the child outside. The order cut through the rain before Clara Whitmore could even reach the bottom step. She stopped in the courtyard of Ashvale Park with water streaming down her pale face, her thin work dress clinging to her knees, and her heart fixed on the small shape beneath the courthouse awning. Noah was only 4 years old, wrapped in the faded brown sweater she had mended so many times the sleeves no longer matched. He sat on the wet stone with his knees pulled to his chest, light brown hair plastered to his forehead, gray eyes too wide for a child who should have been asleep in a warm bed. Clara tried to move toward him, but the ring of pack law held her back more tightly than any hand could have. No Omega crossed the Alpha's command in the ritual courtyard, not if she wanted to keep the few scraps of safety she still had. Alpha Grant Holloway stood under the covered steps, dry beneath a black umbrella held by a servant, his expression carved into the kind of disappointment men used when they wanted cruelty to look like discipline. "You were warned, Clara," he said. "The laundry room is for work, not for hiding your mistake." A ripple moved through the gathered wolves. Some had come from dinner, still holding cups of cider. Some watched from windows lit gold against the storm. None looked at Noah long enough to feel shame. Clara's hands shook at her sides. "He was cold," she said. "The east shed leaks. I only let him sleep near the boiler for one night." Vivian Cross, standing beside Grant in a cream rain cloak trimmed with silver, gave a soft laugh. One night becomes entitlement. Entitlement becomes disorder. That is how packs lose standards. Clara barely heard her. Noah's lower lip trembled, but he did not cry. That frightened her more than tears would have. He had learned too early that crying made adults annoyed instead of kind. "Please," Clara said, turning back to Grant. She forced herself to lower her voice, to keep it respectful, to make herself small enough that he might mistake mercy for his own idea. "Punish me however the court thinks proper. But let me take my son inside. Just one blanket. He is 4 years old." Grant's gaze shifted to the child, then away as if Noah were a problem written on a page. "A child without a recorded father belongs to the mother's rank. Your rank is charity. Do not ask this pack to honor what you refuse to explain." The words landed with familiar weight. Fatherless. Shame-born. Unclaimed. Clara had heard them whispered over washtubs, across pantry shelves, outside the chapel doors when she carried Noah past families who pulled their children closer. She had explained once. Years ago, she had told them about the wounded stranger in the northern woods after the blood moon storm, the man with silver eyes and no memory, the man she had kept warm in a hunting cabin until dawn. By morning, he was gone, and by winter, so was the report she had filed. After that, the story became a joke, then a stain, then a judgment. Noah coughed softly. Clara's body moved before caution could stop it. "Noah," she breathed, taking one step forward. Grant's voice sharpened. "Stay where you are." She froze, not because she feared him most, but because Noah was watching. Every choice she made taught her son what survival looked like. So Clara did the only thing left. She lowered herself onto the rain-slick stone where she stood, still several feet from her child, and looked straight at him. "Baby, listen to me," she called gently. "Count the lights in the windows, just like we practice. 1, 2, 3. Keep your eyes on me." Noah nodded, small and brave, his tiny fingers gripping the edge of his sweater. The rain fell harder, silver under the courtyard lamps, and Clara felt something inside her bend, but not break. She did not ask the pack for dignity anymore. She asked only for time. One more minute. One more breath. One more chance to reach her child before the cold night taught him that the world had no room for him. Then, beyond the iron gates, through the curtain of rain, headlights appeared on the mountain road, followed by the dark silhouettes of royal horses and black northern carriages. The courtyard went still. Even Grant turned. Clara did not understand why every wolf suddenly lowered their eyes, or why the air itself seemed to change, colder and cleaner, carrying the scent of pine, snow, and power. She only knew that Noah had lifted his head toward the gates as if he had heard a voice no one else could hear. The royal carriages had not yet reached the courtyard, but their arrival pulled Clara backward through every reason she had ended up on the rain-slick stone, begging for a blanket as if warmth were a privilege instead of a human mercy. Before Ashvale called her shame, she had been Clara Whitmore, the quiet Omega healer with pale hands, soft brown hair, and a gift no one praised until they needed it. She knew which herbs eased fever, which lullabies calmed pups during storms, which pressure points could soothe a frightened wolf before panic took hold. Her work had never been grand enough for court records, but it had mattered in kitchens, nurseries, sick rooms, and winter cabins where ordinary lives were saved one gentle act at a time. Then came the blood moon storm 4 years ago, when the woods north of Ashevale turned silver under lightning and the patrols were ordered indoors. Clara had gone out anyway because an injured deer had been crying near the creek, and she had never learned how to ignore suffering just because it was inconvenient. Instead of a deer, she found a man collapsed beneath the pines, tall even while unconscious, dressed in torn black riding clothes marked with unfamiliar northern stitching. His skin was cold, his breathing uneven, and his silver eyes opened once, unfocused and full of a loneliness so deep it startled her more than the storm. He did not know his name. He only remembered Snow. Clara could have run for help, but the nearest patrol belonged to Grant Holloway, and even then she knew Grant turned every discovery into leverage. So she brought the stranger to an abandoned hunting cabin half a mile from the creek. She built a fire, wrapped him in every blanket she could find, and spoke to him through the night so he would not wake alone. He listened when he could. Once, near dawn, he reached for her wrist, not with force, but with the desperation of a man trying to remember the world. "Do I know you?" he whispered. Clara had answered honestly. "Not yet." By morning, hoofprints marked the mud outside the cabin. The stranger was gone, the fire was dead, and only a strip of black cloth with a silver thread remained in her hand. Clara reported everything to the pack office because that was what the law required. She wrote down the storm, the man, the northern stitching, the eyes. The clerk took the report. Grant read it. Then the paper disappeared. 2 months later, when Clara realized she was carrying Noah, the court asked for a father's name. She gave them the only truth she had. A wounded stranger. No memory. Silver eyes. A laugh moved through the chamber that day, quiet at first, then wide enough to become her new identity. By the time Noah was born, every generous thing she had ever done had been erased beneath one accusation. She had brought dishonor into Ashevale. The nursery closed its doors to her. The healer's room reassigned her shelves. The chapel mothers stopped meeting her gaze. Grant moved her to laundry duty, saying work would teach humility. Vivian Cross told the unmarried girls to avoid Clara if they valued their reputations. Clara endured it because Noah was warm against her chest, because his tiny hand curled around her finger, because when he opened his eyes for the first time, they shone gray with a ring of impossible silver. From that day on, she stopped asking the pack to believe her. She only asked herself to survive long enough for him to grow. Now, kneeling in the rain while northern carriages rolled toward the gates, Clara looked at her son beneath the awning and saw that same silver ring flicker in his eyes. Noah was not staring at the horses. He was not staring at the guards. He was staring at the central carriage as if something inside it had called his name. Noah had always remembered things he had never lived. Clara knew that sounded impossible, so she never said it aloud. She only collected the moments quietly, the way she collected loose buttons and spare thread in the bottom of her apron. When Noah was 2, he drew mountains in the flour dust on the laundry table, tall white peaks with a road winding through them, though he had never traveled farther than the Ashevale Creek. At 3, he woke from dreams whispering about wolves the color of snow, their paws leaving silver prints across a frozen lake. On winter mornings, when frost touched the window, he pressed his small hand to the glass and smiled as if greeting an old friend. Clara would ask, gently, "What do you see, sweetheart?" And Noah would answer, "Home." Each time, Clara's heart would ache with a tenderness too large to hold. Ashevale was the only home he had known, yet it had never welcomed him. The pack gave him corners, leftovers, borrowed blankets, and warnings to stay quiet. But somewhere inside him, beyond the reach of their judgment, another place seemed to be calling. She tried to hide the signs. She kept his sleeves long when the faint crescent on his wrist appeared after nightmares. She looked away when his gray eyes brightened silver during storms. She taught him not to speak of the white wolves, not because she was ashamed, but because Ashevale had a talent for turning wonder into accusation. The first time Vivian Cross saw Noah staring at snow through the chapel window, she had smiled and said, "Strange children grow into dangerous problems." Clara had held Noah closer for the rest of the day. Now, in the ritual courtyard, the rain made every secret harder to conceal. Water ran down Noah's small face and soaked the cuffs of his mismatched sweater. His lips trembled from cold, but his gaze remained fixed on the approaching royal carriage. The closer it came, the brighter his eyes became, pale silver blooming through gray like moonlight under ice. Clara saw it, and panic tightened her chest. "Noah," she called softly, careful not to startle him. "Look at me. Count the windows again." He did not answer. The carriages stopped beyond the iron gates with a deep roll of wheels against wet stone. Northern guards dismounted first, dressed in black coats with silver clasps, their movements calm and precise. The Ashvale wolves lowered their heads one by one, some from respect, others from instinct. Even Grant stepped down from the courthouse entrance, annoyance flickering across his face before he buried it beneath courtly obedience. "Open the gates," he ordered. The iron gates swung inward, and a gust of cold air crossed the courtyard. It smelled nothing like Ashvale's damp leaves and chimney smoke. It smelled like pine forests under fresh snow, like far mountains, like a winter sky so clear it could cut through lies. Noah inhaled sharply. Clara felt it from several feet away, the way his little body reacted as though that scent had reached into him and found something waiting. A pale glow flickered beneath the wet sleeve at his wrist. Clara rose halfway without thinking. "Noah, keep your sleeve down." Grant heard her and turned. His eyes narrowed. Vivian followed his gaze to the child. "What is wrong with him?" she asked, her voice soft but eager. Clara forced herself to stand still. "He is cold." "That is not what I asked." Noah lifted one hand toward the carriage, fingers opening as if toward someone familiar. The crescent on his wrist glimmered again, small and silver, visible for only a breath before Clara shifted to block the view. But Grant had seen enough. His expression changed from irritation to calculation. "Clara," he said slowly, "what have you been hiding?" The courtyard seemed to tilt beneath her. She looked at the royal carriage, then at her son, and suddenly understood that the storm had not come to punish them. It had come to uncover what she had spent 4 years protecting. The central carriage door opened, and the storm seemed to pause around it. A black boot stepped onto the wet stone, followed by the long fall of a dark northern cloak edged in silver. King Adrian North emerged without haste, tall and broad-shouldered, his pale face cut in sharp lines beneath rain-dark hair, his silver eyes moving across Ashvale's courtyard with a calm that made every whispered judgment feel small. He did not look like a man arriving for ceremony. He looked like winter given a crown. The pack lowered itself before him in uneven waves. Some bowed deeply. Others dropped their eyes as if staring too long might reveal something they had hidden. Grant Holloway approached with a practiced smile, one hand pressed over his heart. "Your Majesty, Ashvale is honored. Had we known your convoy would arrive tonight, we would have prepared a proper welcome." Adrian looked past him to the courthouse steps, the gathered wolves, the rain-soaked courtyard, and finally the small boy under the awning. "I prefer honest welcomes," he said. The words were quiet, but Clara saw Grant's smile tighten. Vivian Cross swept into a graceful curtsy, cream cloak untouched by rain beneath her attendant's umbrella. "The storm has made everything appear harsher than it is, my king. You have come during a minor internal matter." Adrian's gaze shifted to Clara. She stood several feet from Noah, soaked through, hands clenched at her sides because every instinct in her body screamed to run to her child. The king looked at her long enough for her breath to catch, but not with the careless curiosity she was used to from powerful men. His attention was precise, almost troubled, as if he were trying to place a melody he had heard in a dream. "Internal," he repeated. Grant stepped in smoothly. "An Omega discipline issue. Nothing that should concern the Northern Crown." A soft sound came from Noah then, not a cry, but a thin breath that shivered in the rain. Adrian's head turned. Clara felt the entire courtyard turn with him. Noah was staring at the king with silver bright in his eyes, his small hand still lifted from beneath the wet sleeve. The crescent on his wrist flickered again, and this time there was no hiding it. The mark glowed like a sliver of moon under his skin. Vivian's expression sharpened with alarm, disguised as disgust. "That child is strange," she whispered, loud enough for others to hear. "He has always been strange." Clara's voice came out before fear could stop it. "He is cold. He is a child." Adrian's eyes moved to her again. Something passed through them, faint and deep, like recognition buried beneath years of snow. Why is he outside? No one answered quickly enough. Rain tapped on umbrellas, pooled along the stone, ran from the edge of Noah's sweater. Grant gave a short, controlled breath. His mother violated housing rules by hiding him in the laundry room. We were correcting the behavior before it spread. Adrian looked at Noah's bare hands, then at Clara's soaked dress, then at the dry porch where half the court stood sheltered. By leaving a 4-year-old in the rain. Grant's jaw tightened. With respect, Your Majesty, Ashvale law teaches accountability by rank. Does Ashvale law teach courage by refusing a blanket to a child? The question landed softly and broke something in the room. Several wolves looked away. Clara felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she held them back. She had waited 4 years for someone to ask the question as if the answer mattered. Noah suddenly pushed himself to his feet. He swayed once, small and unsteady, and Clara took a step forward despite every warning in the courtyard. Adrian moved at the same time, not rushing, but with a controlled urgency that made the guards behind him still. Noah looked up at him, rain on his lashes, silver eyes wide with certainty no one had taught him. Adrian stopped a few feet away, and for the first time since he arrived, the Frost King looked less like a ruler and more like a man hearing his own heart from outside his chest. Noah's voice was small enough to be lost in the rain, but the word carried as if the whole courtyard had been built to hear it. Father! Clara stopped breathing. Grant's face emptied. Vivian's lips parted, then closed again without sound. Even the northern guards, trained to stand like stone through royal councils and border trials, looked toward the child with a shock they could not fully hide. Noah did not seem to understand what he had done. He only stood beneath the courthouse awning with his little hand reaching toward King Adrian North, his wet sleeve slipping back enough for the silver crescent on his wrist to glow in the stormlight. Father, he said again, softer this time, not as a question, not as a child testing a word, but as if he had finally found the person he had been calling in his sleep. Clara's heart hurt so deeply she pressed one hand to her chest. She had never taught him that word for anyone. When Noah asked why other children had fathers at the harvest fair, she told him the truth she could survive saying, that some people were lost before they knew they were loved. She had never given him a name to fill the empty place. She had never pointed toward a stranger and asked a little boy to dream himself into safety. Adrian stood motionless, rain sliding from the edge of his dark hair and down the sharp lines of his face. For the first time, the cold mask of the Frost King cracked, not in public weakness, but in something far more dangerous to a man who had built his life on control. Recognition. His silver eyes locked on Noah's face, then on the glowing crescent, then on Clara. What did he call me? He asked. No one answered. Perhaps no one dared. Noah took one unsteady step forward, and Clara's fear broke through the rules that had held her back. She crossed the wet stone in a rush of skirts and rain, dropping beside him before anyone could stop her. Noah, sweetheart, she whispered, wrapping her arms around him carefully. Look at me. You are safe. I am here. But Noah kept looking past her shoulder at Adrian. He came, the boy murmured. Clara went still. Who came? Noah's little fingers curled in her sleeve. The man from the snow dreams. A murmur rippled through Ashvale, restless and hungry. Grant seized it at once. Your Majesty, you see the problem. The child is confused, and his mother has encouraged these fantasies for attention. Clara looked up sharply. I have not. You expect the Northern Crown to believe a fatherless child invented royal blood out of thin air? Vivian added, her voice smooth and bright with accusation. This is manipulation dressed as innocence. Clara tightened her arms around Noah, not to hide him, but to remind herself that he was real, warm, and frightened, not an argument for others to use. He is 4, she said. He does not know how to manipulate anyone. Adrian's gaze moved to Vivian with such quiet force that her practiced expression faltered. Do not speak of him like a strategy. The courtyard fell silent again. Clara felt the words settle around Noah like a shield. Adrian stepped closer, then stopped several feet away, giving the child space. That restraint undid Clara more than urgency would have. Noah, he said, his voice lower now, less king than man. Who told you to call me that? Noah blinked up at him through rain-damp lashes. No one. Then why did you? The boy looked confused by the question, as if adults had once again made something simple difficult. He touched his small wrist, where the crescent glowed beneath his skin. Because I know you. Adrian's breath changed. Clara heard it even through the rain. A quiet inhale, controlled too late. For 4 years, Adrian North had been a name spoken in distant reports, a ruler beyond mountains, a cold power with no place in her laundry room life. But in that moment, as he stared at her son with the grief of a man remembering something stolen from him, Clara saw the stranger from the Blood Moon cabin beneath the crown. The same silver eyes, the same stillness, the same lonely soul reaching through the dark. The lie tried to build itself quickly, because lies in Ashvale had always known where to find help. Grant stepped forward before the silence could become dangerous, rain sliding from the edge of his umbrella while Clara and Noah remained soaked in the open air. Your Majesty, this is exactly why the mother was placed under discipline. She fills the child's head with stories, then waits for a powerful audience. It is not the first time she has used confusion to escape consequence. Clara felt the courtyard turn toward her, not with curiosity, but with the old readiness to believe the worst. It was a familiar kind of weather, colder than rain. Vivian moved beside Grant with a sorrowful expression arranged for the king. A lonely Omega can become desperate, she said. No one blames the child, but the mother has allowed him to grow strange, isolated, obsessed with fantasies of the North. Noah pressed closer to Clara, his small body shaking under her arms. I am not strange, he whispered. The words were so soft that only she should have heard them, but Adrian did. His eyes shifted to Noah, and something in his face went still in a different way, not royal, not distant, but focused with a kind of restrained care that made Clara's throat tighten. No, Adrian said. You are not. Grant's smile hardened. Your Majesty, with respect, a child's word cannot challenge pack record. The boy has no father listed. The mother refused to provide one. Ashvale has carried the burden of her misconduct for 4 years. Clara lifted her head. I gave a report. Grant did not look at her. There was no valid report. There was, she said, her voice trembling but clear. After the Blood Moon storm, I wrote what happened. I gave it to the registry office. A few older wolves shifted uncomfortably. Vivian's eyes flashed. A convenient memory. Adrian turned to Clara fully. The rain ran between them, silver in the courtyard lamps. Tell me. 2 words. No accusation. No command dressed as courtesy. Just space for truth. Clara held Noah tighter and forced herself to speak past years of being laughed into silence. I found a man in the northern woods 4 years ago. He was injured, disoriented, and wearing black riding clothes with silver stitching. He did not know his name. I took him to the old hunting cabin near Ash Creek. I kept the fire going until dawn. When I woke, he was gone. I reported it. Later, the report disappeared. Adrian's expression did not change, but the air around him seemed to draw inward. What did he say? Clara closed her eyes for one breath, and the cabin returned. Smoke, rain, trembling firelight, silver eyes opening in the dark. He said he remembered snow. The courtyard went quiet. Even the horses beyond the gate stilled. Adrian looked down at Noah's wrist, where the crescent pulsed beneath wet fabric, then slowly removed the glove from his right hand. On his finger was a royal seal ring of white gold and dark stone, carved with the northern wolf beneath a crescent moon. Grant's voice sharpened. Your Majesty, there is no need to indulge this spectacle. Adrian did not answer him. He crouched in front of Noah, low enough that the child did not have to look up so far. Noah, he said gently, may I see your hand? Clara's body tightened with instinct, but Adrian looked at her first. He waited. That waiting broke something open inside her, because no one in Ashvale had waited for her permission in years. Clara nodded once. Noah reached out. The moment Adrian's ring came near the child's wrist, the silver crescent flared bright and calm, answering the seal with a line of pale light that connected them for one impossible second. Gasps rose from the pack. Vivian stepped back. Grant's umbrella tilted in his hand. Adrian went utterly still, staring at the mark as if the world had narrowed to the space between his ring and a little boy's wrist. Noah smiled through chattering teeth. See, he whispered. I knew you. Clara could not move. She could barely breathe. Adrian looked at her then, and the Frost King's eyes held the truth before his mouth spoke it. Not suspicion. Not pity. Recognition. Blood answers blood, he said quietly. The pale line between Adrian's ring and Noah's wrist faded, but the truth it revealed stayed bright in every face around them. Clara sat back on her heels with her arms around her son, unable to decide which feeling should come first: relief, terror, wonder, or the deep ache of 4 stolen years. Noah leaned toward Adrian with the simple trust of a child who had never needed proof as much as the adults did. Blood answers blood, Adrian repeated, softer this time, as if speaking to himself. The words carried through the rain and settled over Ashvale like a verdict older than any pack law. Grant found his voice first. A magical reaction can be misread. The child may carry a distant trace of northern ancestry. That does not establish royal claim. Adrian rose slowly, and with him the courtyard seemed to remember who stood before it. My house seal does not answer distant traces. Grant's jaw tightened. Vivian stepped closer, her cream cloak bright against the storm. Your Majesty, surely caution is wise. A ruler of your standing cannot accept scandal based on the word of an Omega and a child. Clara felt the old shame rise again, trained into her by years of lowered eyes and closed doors. But before it could take root, Noah slipped his small hand from hers and looked up at Vivian. Mama does not lie. The words were not loud, but they were steady. Clara's breath caught. Adrian looked at Noah, and the hard line of his mouth eased by the smallest degree. Then he turned to Vivian. The child understands honor better than this court. No one answered. Rain slid from the courthouse roof in silver curtains. Adrian removed the royal seal ring from his finger and held it in his palm. Without it, his hand looked strangely human, strong but bare, marked by the cold and duty of a northern life. He lowered the ring near Noah's wrist again, and this time the crescent did not merely glow. It unfolded into a small white wolf beneath a crescent moon, the same emblem carved into the ring, the same crest stitched on every northern guard's cloak. A sound moved through the pack, not quite a gasp, not quite a prayer. Clara stared at the mark through tears she could no longer hold back. For 4 years, she had protected Noah from questions she could not answer. Now the answer was shining on his skin. Adrian's silver eyes lifted to hers. The night of the blood moon, he said. I remember pieces. Rain. A cabin. A fire. A woman's voice telling me to stay awake. Clara pressed a trembling hand over her mouth. You did not know your name. No. His gaze darkened, not with anger at her, but with something colder aimed beyond her. I was returning from a border summit. My escort was separated in the storm. I woke 2 days later north of the ridge with no memory of how I survived the first night. Grant shifted almost imperceptibly. Adrian noticed. So did Clara. Your Majesty, Grant said. Ashvale patrols searched those woods. Did they? Adrian asked. Then they will have records. Vivian's face turned carefully blank. The kind of blank that hid panic behind manners. Adrian looked to the captain of his guards. Secure the registry office. Bring me every report filed during the blood moon week 4 years ago, especially anything signed by Clara Whitmore. Grant's eyes sharpened. That is an internal archive. It became royal evidence the moment my son was left in your reign. The word son changed the world. Clara felt Noah go still in her arms. Adrian looked down at him, and the Frost King's voice gentled into something almost unfamiliar. If you will allow it, Noah, I would like to know you properly. Noah smiled, shy and certain. Can Mama come too? Adrian's answer came without hesitation. Your mother comes first. Adrian's words moved through the courtyard with a quiet force that no one could dress up, twist, or dismiss. Your mother comes first. Clara had spent 4 years standing last in every line, last in every record, last in every act of mercy Ashvale was willing to spare. Yet the Alpha King of the North had spoken as if her place beside Noah was not a favor to be granted, but a truth to be honored. Noah looked at her with a small, hopeful smile, and something inside Clara nearly broke from tenderness alone. Grant stepped forward, his voice lowered into careful control. Your Majesty, surely no one questions a mother's attachment, but royal matters require order. The child can be examined by northern healers while the mother remains here to answer for her violations. Clara's arms tightened around Noah. Before fear could pull her backward, Adrian turned. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. She will answer no accusation from the pack that erased her report. Grant's face went still. That has not been proven. At that moment, the doors of the registry office opened across the courtyard. Two northern guards returned with a gray-haired Ashvale clerk between them, the elderly woman clutching a bundle of sealed papers to her chest. She looked soaked, frightened, and ashamed. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing so quickly the papers trembled. "I kept copies." Grant's head snapped toward her. "Martha." The clerk flinched, but did not retreat. "I was told to burn the original report after the blood moon week. I could not." Miss Whitmore came in shaking, soaked through, carrying a strip of black cloth with northern silver thread. She wrote everything down. The injured man, the cabin, the memory loss. I made a copy before the archive was altered. The courtyard held its breath. Vivian's elegant mask cracked around the eyes. Clara stared at the clerk, remembering the woman behind the registry desk who had refused to meet her gaze years ago. She had thought Martha was another door closed against her. She had not known one small piece of truth had survived in secret. Adrian accepted the papers from his guard and opened the first page beneath the rain. The ink had faded at the edges, but Clara recognized her own careful handwriting. Her name, the date, the blood moon storm, the description of the stranger's silver eyes, the strip of cloth, the hunting cabin near Ash Creek. Adrian read in silence, and with every passing second, Grant seemed to lose height without moving. "There is more," Martha whispered. "A letter to Miss Whitmore wrote to the Northern Crown after the child was born. She asked only whether any missing rider had been reported that night." Clara's breath caught. "You said it was sent." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I am sorry. Alpha Grant ordered it withheld." Noah looked from face to face, too young to understand all the words, but old enough to feel the room changing around his mother. Adrian folded the letter with careful hands, then placed it inside his coat as if it were something sacred. "Clara Whitmore did not shame Ashvale," he said. "She saved a man your pack chose not to find. She protected a child your pack chose not to shelter. She carried truth while this court carried lies." Grant opened his mouth, but no sound came. Adrian stepped out from beneath the partial shelter of the gatehouse and into the rain with Clara and Noah, making no effort to avoid the storm that had been allowed to soak them. He removed his dark northern cloak and held it around Clara's shoulders first, then drew one side gently over Noah. Warmth surrounded them, heavy and clean with the scent of pine and snow. Clara looked up at him, unable to form the gratitude pressing against her ribs. Adrian's expression remained controlled, but his voice softened where only she and Noah could hear. "You kept him safe without knowing who would come for him." Clara swallowed. "I only knew he was mine." Adrian's eyes moved to Noah, then back to her. That was enough. The rain began to soften as Adrian wrapped the northern cloak around Clara and Noah, as if the storm itself had heard enough. For the first time that night, Noah stopped shivering. He leaned into the warmth between them, one small hand resting against Clara's dress and the other curled near Adrian's coat, not quite reaching, not quite afraid. Adrian noticed, and instead of taking what had not yet been offered, he lowered his hand between them, palm open. Noah studied it with solemn curiosity, then placed his fingers in the king's hand. The silver crescent on his wrist glowed once, gentle as moonlight on water. Around the courtyard, Ashvale watched in silence. Grant stood beneath the courthouse steps with the look of a man whose authority had dissolved without a single shout. Vivian lowered her eyes, her cream cloak no longer bright, but pale and useless beneath the gray sky. The old clerk wept quietly beside the registry door. No one moved to stop Clara when Adrian guided her toward the waiting carriage. That was how she knew the truth had finally become stronger than their shame. At the gate, Clara paused. The laundry windows glowed faintly behind the rain, and beyond them waited the narrow cot where she and Noah had slept through winter drafts, the cracked cup she used for tea, the little shelf where Noah kept stones shaped like mountains. It was not much, but it had held every year of their survival. Leaving it should have felt like freedom alone. Instead, it felt like grief too, because even hard places can hold pieces of a life you fought to protect. Adrian seemed to understand without being told. "You may send for anything you wish," he said. "Or nothing at all." Clara looked up at him. His face remained composed, angular and cold to anyone watching. but his eyes held a careful patience that made the choice feel real. "There is a blue blanket in the laundry room," she said softly. "Noah will not sleep without it." Adrian turned to his captain. "Bring the blanket." No hesitation. No mockery. No reminder that kings had larger concerns. Noah's tired face brightened a little. "The one with the moon patch." Clara brushed wet hair from his forehead. "Yes, baby. That one." Adrian's expression shifted almost invisibly at the word baby, as though the ordinary tenderness of it had reached a place no royal title ever touched. When the blanket was brought, worn and faded and patched with a crooked silver moon, Adrian accepted it with both hands before passing it to Clara. Noah clutched it to his chest and finally let out a sleepy sigh. The sound nearly broke the last of Clara's strength. Adrian bent slightly, keeping his voice low. "May I carry him?" Clara looked at Noah first. "Sweetheart." Noah nodded, already half asleep. Adrian lifted him with a care so deliberate that the watching pack seemed to fade into nothing. Noah rested his head against the king's shoulder as if he had always known the shape of that safety. Clara stepped into the carriage beside them, still wrapped in northern warmth, still unsure where tomorrow would lead. As the door closed, she looked once more at Ashvale. The place that had called her shame now stood behind her in silence. The place that had left her child in the rain now watched the child of the north leave beneath royal protection. The carriages began to move, wheels rolling through silver puddles toward the mountain road. Behind them, the rain stopped. Ahead, the clouds opened just enough for the moon to lay a pale path across the pines. Noah slept against Adrian's shoulder, one hand tucked in Clara's, binding the three of them in a quiet no court could rewrite. Clara did not know whether the north would heal every wound, or whether the truth would ask more courage from her than sorrow ever had. But when Adrian looked across the dim carriage and said, "You are not alone now," she believed him. And for the first time in 4 years, the road ahead did not feel like exile. It felt like home finding its way back to them.